Before we get started, though, I just want to acknowledge that these are really tough times right now. And I know I'm not alone in feeling pretty despondent about the state of our country at the moment. Between the COVID pandemic, systemic racism and violence, and economic inequality, there is a lot to worry about. Our school community includes many students and family and staff of color, and Neighborhood House is particularly impacted by current events and the legacy of the past from which they spring, which makes today's session about student supports a particularly timely one. I'm really grateful that you've joined us here today for this Lunch and Learn. For those of you who've made it to one of our previous events in the series, you know that they're bringing us together in new and unique ways to share elements of our program with you. We have some longtime friends with us today, and those of you who have been supporters and friends of Neighborhood House for a long time know a lot about us, but we also have some newer friends. So I just want to share a quick intro about Neighborhood House, and then I'll introduce today's topic and speaker. Neighborhood House was one of the first charter public schools in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and in the country. We started as a small K-2 elementary school back in 1995, and we've grown over the last 25 years to serve over 700 students across 2 campuses. And this upcoming year, we're really excited because we're going to be celebrating 2 milestones, specifically our 25th anniversary and our first graduating class of seniors next year who will be graduating next June. Today's Lunch and Learn topic is, as I said earlier, student supports. And leading the discussion today is Neighborhood House's Director of Student Services, Dana Reeder. Dana, as a way of biographical background, received her undergraduate degree from Cornell University and a master's degree in school psychology from Columbia University Teachers College. She also has a master's degree in neuroscience and education from the Harvard Graduate School of Education's Mind, Brain, and Education program. But those elements of her resume don't really tell the whole story. To us at Neighborhood House, Dana is a tireless advocate for young people, and she really encourages all of us at Neighborhood House to build better programs to help ensure that all of our students develop and thrive. And I'm grateful for her as a colleague and as a friend, and also for her participation in leading us through this session today. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Dana Reeder.
Thanks, Kate. I'm emotional. That was very sweet. And thank you, Nicole, for the intro. Nicole's setting up our PowerPoint presentation for today. But I'd like to start us off with a brief mindfulness exercise. We try to incorporate a moment of mindfulness of some kind or some kind of joining activity at the start of all of our student support team meeting spaces, both in person and remote. They're a helpful way to bring people together and to connect us to the present space. Given the current state of the world and the events of the past week in particular, taking a moment for mindfulness seems particularly important. So wherever you are, just follow along with the video. It'll be about a minute of instructions and then 1 minute of quiet meditation. At the end, I'll check back to see how you feel.
Now put your hands in any position that's balanced, symmetrical, and still. Like this, or like this. During the minute, simply focus on your breathing, moment by moment. Of course, even in the space of a minute, you will get distracted. That's perfectly normal. It doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. But as soon as you notice that you're distracted, just think, and bring your mind back to your breathing. I'll ring a bell so you know when to start and when to finish. Ready? Then close your eyes. Oh, one more thing. It's okay to smile. And go. As you open your eyes, notice how you feel right now. Maybe a little bit refreshed, a little bit more awake, a little bit more open-minded. Not bad for a minute.
I just love that. It always makes me smile, and I've seen it about 1,000 times. So quick thumbs up. You can either use the emoji reaction in Zoom or give us the old-fashioned way, thumbs up or thumbs down, somewhere in the middle. How are you feeling right now? Click through. Great, thank you. Okay, so let's get started. As many of you already know, at NHCS, we believe that the social emotional health of our students is as essential to academic and life success. We can do the next slide. It's built into our mission, and we've created an organizational structure that supports it. Most recently, this has included a student support coordinator, counselors, psychologists, therapeutic support staff, behavioral aides, and interns. There's also a special education teacher at every grade level in grades 2 through what will be 12. And we integrate student supports into our school-wide programming. It's just who we are. To drive the point home, I've included the NHCS mission on this slide. Can I get a volunteer to read the first paragraph? You can raise your hand or use your emoji to raise a hand. I gotta see. I might call on someone, cold call. Okay, sorry, Mom. Can you read the first paragraph, please? You have to unmute yourself.
Our mission, Neighborhood House Charter School, combines rich and structured learning with extensive social emotional programming to help all our students succeed in school and in life. We strive to develop scholars who seek knowledge, embrace effort, act thoughtfully, and commit to the common good.
All right, thank you. All right, Joe, can you see the screen? Can you read the second paragraph?
Yes. Many children come to us with significant needs. We don't give up on them. Our goal is that all of our students thrive at Neighborhood House, graduate from high school, and pursue post-secondary education on the path to achieve life success.
Thank you, Joe. So why don't you take a moment to reflect on how our mission statement connects to the focus of today's Lunch and Learn. Just take a moment, and then you can put some thoughts in the chat, or you can just chime in, raise your hand and chime in, or unmute yourself and just chime in. How do you think that our mission statement connects with the focus of today's Lunch and Learn?
I'd just make a quick comment, and that's in the first paragraph. We talk about students succeed in school and in life. It occurs to me that this is life that we're in, and hopefully what we give them allows them to deal with what we have going on right now.
Yeah, thank you. I'll read from the chat. We've got the social emotional component is particularly important to deal with today because of distance learning. We're much less social, or social in a different way. And we'll be talking a lot about what we do under normal circumstances, typical circumstances, and also about what social emotional learning and student supports look like during COVID. Anyone else? Last minute thoughts? All right, I appreciate that. So if we go to the next slide, our approach to social emotional learning we often refer to as SEL, mirrors our approach to academics. What that means is we provide a range of opportunities to all students at what's called a Tier 1 level. For students who need additional support or who are not responding to or improving at a Tier 1 level, then we might provide Tier 2 more targeted interventions. Students with the most significant needs receive more intensive interventions. In academics, this looks like a flow from regular education classes to small group intervention to special education. In SEL, it's the same. We provide Tier 1 supports to all students, targeted small groups with similar content for Tier 2, and then more intensive Tier 3 individual or group counseling to address specific lagging skills. We also have a small but growing population of students in an inclusive therapeutic support program. The next slide. In the lower school, social emotional learning at a Tier 1 is programming that's implemented by the classroom teacher using content developed by our student support team, often our team of amazing interns. In K1, we start our Tier 1 intervention with a focus on self-awareness and identity development. In K2, SEL addresses topics related to social thinking, including sharing, group participation, and behavior. In first grade, students work through a program that a Harvard counseling intern developed a few years ago that we call All the Feels. It is focused on developing emotional literacy skills, and it's based largely on the RULER approach, which stands for Recognize, Understand, Label, Express, and Regulate Emotions. The RULER approach comes out of the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. In second grade, we return to our social thinking program, this time with a focus on flexible thinking and social problem solving. And in grade 3, we reboot All the Feels, this time with an emphasis on coping strategies and managing unpleasant emotions. In fourth grade, we work with students to define and address bullying and to help them develop skills to self-advocate and stand up for one another as helpful bystanders. As we move into middle school and high school, Tier 1 SEL is taught through our advisory program. Small groups led by classroom teachers and staff that meet several times a week. Again, as with academics, there are always going to be students with significantly lagging skills that do not respond to Tier 1 interventions. At NHCS, we approach social, emotional, and behavioral skills from a growth mindset. I'm going to do the next slide. We assume that kids would do well if they had the skills to succeed. The typical approach to behavior intervention focuses on changing the observed behavior. And often this is done through some kind of reinforcement system, like a sticker chart or something like that. But reinforcement systems like this assume that kids have the skills they need to change their behavior, and they often ignore the underlying challenges and environmental triggers, environmental factors that trigger those challenges. So I'd actually like to introduce our school psychology intern, Lauren Anderson, to talk more about how we use this process to understand student needs and make recommendations for support. Lauren graduated from Boston College and worked as an academic interventionist and provided in-home family and child therapeutic supports before completing her master's degree in school psychology at Tufts University this spring. We are particularly excited to welcome Lauren to our NHCS family as our new school psychologist at the Queen Street campus in the fall.
Thanks, Dana. So instead of focusing on observable behavior, we think about the skills that are necessary for students to meet the academic, behavioral, and social expectations of the school day. The collaborative problem-solving approach suggests that it is lagging skills, not a lack of motivation, that leads to challenging behaviors. I'm going to walk us through this chart on the left with an example. So let's say a student is faced with an expectation to complete a math worksheet within a 15-minute time period. If that student possesses the necessary math skills, has the ability to sustain attention for 15 minutes, has the communication skills to ask for help if needed, and can manage their time to complete the work within the time limit, then that student will be able to complete the task as expected. But if another student is faced with that same expectation and they're lacking any of those necessary skills to complete the task, then they might exhibit a challenging behavior like ripping up their worksheet. So we use this framework as part of the referral process to the student support team. When a teacher recognizes that a student is engaging in more frequent challenging behaviors than their peers and may require more support, they can refer that student to the student support team. We can go to the next slide. And the referral form, which has been adapted from Think Kids out of Mass General Hospital, asks teachers to think about the student's skills in a variety of neurocognitive areas. This includes communication and language skills, attention and working memory, emotion and self-regulation skills, their cognitive flexibility, and social thinking skills. So teachers report whether specific skills are areas of strength or areas of difficulty for the student. If a skill is identified as being an area of difficulty for the student or a lagging skill, then the teacher is asked when and where there is a demand for these skills being placed on the student, and what happens when the student is unable to meet the demand adaptively, sometimes a challenging behavior. So our student support coordinator collects this referral form and sends it out to other members of the student support team, which includes our school nurse, counselors, school psychologists, the occupational therapist, speech and language pathologist, our family engagement coordinator, the dean of students for that school, and therapeutic support specialists. So members of the student support team review the referral form, and relevant team members join a meeting with the referring teacher to offer recommendations based on the list of student strengths and lagging skills. For example, if a student has lagging skills in the area of self-regulation, it might be recommended that the occupational therapist conduct an observation to better understand the student's sensory processing needs. Or the student might be referred for counseling to work on learning emotion regulation skills so that that student can better meet the demands of the school day. The team discusses these recommendations and determines which recommendations will be put in place, who will be responsible for implementing them, and how we will monitor the student's progress and skill acquisition. 6 weeks after the initial SST referral meeting, a follow-up meeting occurs with the team to discuss progress and make any changes or updates to the support plan.
Thank you, Lauren. At this point, I wanted to pause and see if anybody has any questions or needs any clarification about our regular interventions, social emotional learning, or our referral process. You can type them into the chat and I can read them, or you can feel free to chime in. I see Bob raising his hand. Bob, just unmute yourself and go for it.
Okay, my question is, what is the size of the staff that you have? And is it just for the Queensbury campus or for both?
Oh, great question. So my staff, if we're talking about all of student support services, is almost 40 staff members. So that includes occupational therapists, behavioral aides, school nurses, counselors, psychologists, special education teachers, our amazing coordinators, therapeutic staff, and it is from K1 all the way up through high school.
Okay, so 44, 700 plus a slight number of kids. Are they full-time equivalents or some of them part-time?
Yes, almost all of them are full-time. We have in the middle school and high school, our occupational therapist and our speech therapist are part-time.
Okay, this is very impressive. Okay, I think this shows the commitment. It's not as if you had two people doing the job. You know, one in the element, one in one school, one in the other. 40 people, a lot of people. Thank you.
A lot of people. Yeah, you're welcome. And I've done a lot of this work on my own in other schools, and I think it's a real testament to NHCS's commitment to the mission that we've been able to not only did I come into a situation where there was already a lot of support, but in partnership with Kate and the rest of our leadership team, and in consultation with our current staff, our programs have grown since I've been there, and this is my 3rd year. And honestly, there have been a lot of things that I've been wanting to do for 10 years, but haven't been able to put in place in other schools, but NHCS makes space for this.
That's great.
So I feel very grateful. So thanks for noticing that. Anybody else have any questions or thoughts? Anything they want to point out? It's hard for me to see. I don't see everybody. So if you want to raise your hand or put it in the chat. There'll be plenty of time afterwards for questions too. So why don't we keep it moving? So that really brings us to where we are today, student supports in the time of COVID-19. Because of our strong foundation, like Bob was saying, from the moment we decided to close on March 13th, our student support team quickly went into action to provide a seamless transition to promote, or to as seamless transition as possible to remote therapeutic support. Starting the first week we were closed, our counseling staff, led by our student support coordinator, Rose Kanan, who's on the call, set up remote counseling sessions and schedules for students. As a result, our counseling staff, including our amazing interns again, have been providing support for over 120 students via Zoom, Google Hangouts, phone calls, texts, and parent support throughout the school closure experience. But these are unprecedented times, and the goals of therapeutic intervention look different now than they did when we were in school. Business as usual looked like counselors developing coping strategies to resolve school-based challenges. But remote learning is different and exhausting in a completely different way. At school, there's a natural structure and order to the day. Students have binders and lockers and routines and schedules, but COVID has upended all of this. Especially in adolescence, the planning and organization skills required for successful school engagement are being fine-tuned. School provides the scaffolds needed for success, and when you take away those regular structures, many students will struggle, especially the students who already needed support. Even adults have struggled. I know that it took me 2 to 3 weeks to figure out a new way for me to manage my schedule and keep notes in meetings and kind of stay on top of everything that was going on. And I do this for a living, you know. The pandemic has also imposed an unprecedented amount of stress on everyone in our community. When we're stressed, when we're overwhelmed and are in our feelings, we're not able to access our executive functioning skills. Those executive functioning skills are the ones that plan and organize and make decisions like executives would in a company. Our brains then shift to survival mode. And in this time of crisis, we've had to step back and think about how we can support our students in new and different ways. We've had to think very carefully about how we organize information in Google Classrooms, how we assign work, how we teach and communicate with children, all because we've needed to make it as organized and structured as possible because all of their regular norms and structures no longer exist. So at this point, I'd like to introduce Dr. Ashley Cameron, our high school psychologist, to talk about how therapeutic supports have changed during COVID-19. Dr. Cameron is a graduate of the University of Connecticut and received a master's degree, a certificate of advanced study, and her PhD in school psychology from Northeastern University. Before joining our team this past fall, Dr. Cameron completed fieldwork and practicum experience in public and charter schools, as well as at Franciscan Children's Hospital and the McLean Franciscan Children's Inpatient Psychiatric Hospitalization Unit. Take it away, Ashley.
Thank you, Dana. So our first step in counseling has been to provide emotional support in order to help students acknowledge what they're feeling, especially with this transition to online learning. With regards to emotions, I tend to look at emotions as naturally occurring responses that motivate and inform our behaviors. And so if we don't listen to our emotions, then we risk at reacting blindly without full awareness of what we actually need and we want in the moment. And although we don't like experiencing unpleasant emotions, we need to experience them, especially now more than ever. In counseling sessions, we've been discussing and providing education about the impact of emotions on our productivity in terms of like completing work, the school assignments, as well as mental health. And from there, we went into having more thoughtful discussions with students about coping skills and the strategies that they're using to manage their emotions. So for many of my students, we've been focusing on reviewing coping strategies that were helpful in the past and figuring out ways to transfer them into the current situation. We've been practicing coping skills via Zoom and also discussing the impact of those skills on their thoughts, their feelings, and behaviors, kind of like what we did in the beginning of the presentation with having a meditation and a mindfulness moment is some of the things that we also do in counseling sessions. Another example of the way we practice those coping skills is my colleague at the high school spent one of her sessions cooking a recipe with the student together, who often identifies cooking as a coping skill and an enjoyment for her. Another major area that's come up during COVID is helping students and their families with managing sleep schedules. So more specifically, we've been reviewing sleep hygiene tips and also conducting sleep interventions to help students and their families develop a sleep schedule and get back on track. In addition to emotion regulation and coping skills, we're providing a lot of support to increase executive functioning skills in order for students to be successful during virtual learning. So as Dana stated, executive functioning refers to the mental process that help regulate and control a person's thoughts, actions, and emotions. Specific executive functions can include our ability to plan and implement our schedules, organize our thoughts before we communicate them, initiate and stop actions, as well as setting appropriate goals to complete a task, being able to block out distractions and adjust our behavior so that we can reach that specific goal. What that looks like in counseling is helping students to identify what have been the barriers to their success, and then also developing plans to complete school assignments, whether that is breaking down school tasks, setting daily and weekly goals, as well as developing schedules just overall. Counselors, in addition to the weekly sessions, we've also been checking in with students about their goals periodically throughout the week and providing coaching as needed via Zoom, text messages, phone calls, different things like that. Another major change that I've noticed has been the increase in counselors' collaborations with parents regarding ways to support students in their family's social and emotional well-being. So many of us are in contact with families weekly, reviewing coping strategies that we talk about in sessions, as well as executive functioning plans and schedules that we've created in order to help students be more successful at practicing these skills at home.
Thanks, Ashley. Lauren, can you share some information about how counseling services have changed in the lower school since COVID started?
Yeah, absolutely. So counseling in the lower school looks a little different than it does at the high school, and a little different now that we're holding virtual sessions. But overall, we're still focusing on problem solving. The problems just look a little different right now. For example, the mom of one of my students I work with said that she was having a hard time getting her work done at home because of frequent interruptions from her daughter asking questions. So I worked with that student on identifying what problems she could handle on her own and which ones she might need help from her mom to solve so that her mom could get more work done. And much like when we were meeting in person, we are also continuing to work on identifying emotions and coping skills for managing those big emotions. Virtually, this may look like playing feeling charades, practicing coping skills like Ashley said, or simply normalizing all of the emotions we're going through right now. So the same skills are being taught and addressed that were relevant for school, and now we're working on generalizing these skills to the home environment.
Great. If anyone wants to stay on after, I'm sure Lauren will lead us on a feeling charade
Gladly.
game. I'm sure it'll be great. Thanks, Lauren and Ashley. Really appreciate it. So what's next? We can't go back to business as usual. That would be ignoring the gravity of this experience. So in order to plan effectively, we've been working with our student support coordinator, or I've been working with our student support coordinator, Rose Kanan, and other members of our student support teams, and using a memo from the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, which stands, there's an acronym for that called CASEL. This memo is called an initial guide to leveraging the power of social emotional learning as you prepare to reopen and renew your school community. The guide has encouraged us to think not only about what programming is needed, but also about how we build partnerships and deepen our staff's understanding of SEL, how we can help our staff connect and heal while developing their own SEL competencies, ensuring that spaces we set up, either in person or remote in the fall, are emotionally and physically safe and supportive, and thinking through how we can use data to deepen relationships and continue to improve support within our school community. So as we roll up our sleeves to do this incredibly challenging work, we'll be looking to our school community partners, We'll need our entire school community, including all of you, to share ideas and stay engaged as we do this work. Thank you so much for joining.
I know we're going to go to questions in a moment, but before we did, I just wanted to personally thank Dana and Ashley and Lauren for this. It's very informative. I also want to welcome to the call Kevin Andrews, our founding headmaster, and say that really the work that we are doing today is the legacy of work that originated in Kevin's vision. And obviously it has evolved in various ways to recognize the fact that we are now a K through 12, soon to be a K through 12 school, but its origins certainly were planted in the seeds that Kevin and the others that worked with him in the early days always envisioned for our school. So thanks and welcome, Kevin.
This is Joe. Can I ask a question?
Of course, go ahead.
That was impressive before the answer to Bob's question about 40, or so people being involved in, this effort. What do we do in terms of coordinating that, and in this environment, how are we supporting the staff? Because I'm sure there's extra stress, on top of the normally high stress that exists. What's going on to help that, say a community among the staff, and then, maybe meeting their needs that, so they can be effective with the students?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I am very fortunate to have an amazing team of coordinators that help me and the rest of our staff do this work. We have 2 special education coordinators, one for our Queen Street campus and one for our high school campus. And as I've mentioned in the talk, we also have a student support coordinator, Rose Kanan. And Rose has been meeting similar to actually what we were doing when we were in person, but probably, I guess the nature of the sessions have been different, but Rose meets with our behavioral aides every week. She meets with our counseling team every week. I meet with Rose multiple times a week, and I meet with Tanisha Cooper, our family engagement coordinator. There's a lot of one-to-one check-ins and group check-ins, and we really start all these spaces, like I said in the beginning, with some kind of joining activity where, what's bringing you joy right now, what's been hard. We spent our middle school student support team meeting this past week just talking about the, what's been going on in our country. And, I can't say enough about how that structure has helped to provide the support that I think our staff has needed, not only when we're in the building, but also now while we're remote. I personally am doing a lot more individual check-ins. I meet with my special ed coordinators 3 times a week in a group, and individually each once a week. We're participating in grade level team meetings and leadership meetings in ways that we haven't before. I think there's a lot of communication going on about what's working, about what's not working, and we've shifted some things. As Ashley said, there's a lot more parent support that's going on right now because we're not business as usual. We also do a lot of scheduling and rescheduling and working around the hours that are supportive for our families and for our students. And we've kind of brought new meaning to the phrase that we kind of live by anyway, which is stick to the schedule, but also go with the flow. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Lauren and Ashley, you're welcome to chime in, or Rose, if you have any other thoughts, or Kate. But I think having times to connect, having clear structures of who is supported by who. All of my special ed teachers report and have one-to-one check-ins with their special ed coordinator every week. So there's a lot of support for the staff and thinking about how they can then support students. But if anyone else wants to chime in, that's fine.
I'll chime in real quick. So,
thanks, Rose.
Hi everyone, this is Rose. Last month we also created, with the help of Tanisha and our middle school guidance counselor, a self-care calendar for staff. and it was very colorful, and each day was different ideas to do for self-care, and we attached links so it would be easy for folks to just click on the link, and if one of the days was make a smoothie, you clicked on the link and it brought you to like 50 different types of smoothies you could make, so that you didn't have to like think of these ideas yourself. Some other, and Tanisha, totally chime in if you want, but Tanisha did some meditations. She videotaped herself doing meditations. Those were included on the calendar. Stuff around exercising and listening to music and dancing and making facial masks and doing circus tricks and just trying to hit on all the different senses. And it was an idea that I came up with, but with the help of Tanisha and Leona, were able to like put it out. I was realizing that staff were really struggling, just managing personal and professional, and trying to balance everything. And so we created the staff self-care calendar, and we also sent it out to families, and Tanisha shared with me later on that families were just really appreciative of it. So that was just another thing I wanted to chime in about.
Yeah, and I mean, I can't say enough about the amazing work that Tanisha Cooper has been doing supporting our families during this time. I have no words. She's really done an incredible job. And she's everywhere she needs to be, and then some.
Thank you, Dana. Hi, everyone. During this, hi Joe, hi Bob. During this time, it's been really tough for a lot of our families. I do weekly check-ins with our most vulnerable families. We've got a rhythm going. We try to have dance parties for them. We try to have spaces for them to vent and talk, and it's been really helpful. Again, we can't do this work without everyone on the team and all of you, and I'm just thankful that our families are thriving and doing the best they can during this time.
Tanisha, how are they dealing with the present situation and those who have children of all ages? How is that, how are they reacting now?
There's a lot of emotions going. A lot of our, families are angry and sad, and a lot of, they're losing a lot of hope. We are in the process of creating some type of like town hall meeting for them in a couple of weeks to discuss that with the help of our diversity, equity, and inclusion, facilitator. And we're trying our best to support them as best as we can, but we're gonna have an open forum for them to talk publicly and find ways that we can help them. But the temperature right now is pretty cool because people are experiencing a lot of emotion. But a lot of families are checking in on us, on me, on everyone, and they're also worried about the school and the faculty, which speaks to the volume of our community. So we're just supporting everyone the best that we can. Ashley, Lauren, Rose, everyone has pitched in and have been calling families as well.
That's great. Thank you.
I have a question for Ashley. So Ashley, you talked about sleep hygiene and how important that is as it contributes to learning. Are you hearing from parents? I read something recently that confirmed what you said about parents complaining that they can't, particularly of teenagers, they can't get them to go to bed at night, and therefore they're tired and distracted when they're supposed to be working the next day. How do you get these kids to go to sleep before 3 in the morning?
That is such a good question. So one of the things that I usually start with is just taking an inventory of their sleep strategies. I'm just going to generalize all of the things that I've heard. A lot of kids are playing on their phones. They're staying up watching random things until about like 5 o'clock in the morning, they'll tell me, and then they'll go to sleep and then just wake up just in time to be ready for classes. So one thing that we've been working on is trying to adjust those strategies. So for example, I remember with one of my students, I was asking them about, are they working in their bed? Are they doing everything in their bed, in their bedroom? And they were like, yeah. So I was like, all right, let's just try to shift from working in your bedroom to working in the living room and see how that works. And all of a sudden she called me the next week and was like, I slept for like 7 hours. And she was so excited. And then with some of the other students, being able to, like, if they are sleeping at like going to sleep at 5 in the morning, like trying to help them to like push that schedule back, like, okay, this week we're going to try to work on going to bed at 3 in the morning. Then great. Okay, we met that goal. Then we're going to go to bed at 12, and see how just shifting that schedule helps them out to be more successful. And then also talking to them about how it's impacting their mental health. So a lot of kids have talked to me about feeling maybe very like depressed or anxious, and really when we really start to dig deep into it, it's because their sleep schedule is off and they feel completely dysregulated. So throughout the intervention, talking to them about how their body is reacting, how they're feeling overall in their mental health has been huge too. And then also just working with parents about sleep strategies and skills. So like if the child goes to bed and they don't fall asleep within the first hour, maybe they need to get up and take a walk around the house in order to, and then get back in the bed to fall asleep. Different things like that to kind of help support families as well.
Thank you, that was clarified that, thanks.
Yeah, Ashley, or I'm not sure who, how many students do we feel we're losing? In other words, we just simply, the structure and everything else just isn't penetrating, and I'm talking mainly about the high school area.
I think, to be honest, I think we've been doing a pretty incredible job at like reaching students where they're at. So some of the teachers who have noticed like kids are not engaging as much in the virtual learning and things like that have been doing a pretty good job of reaching out to the student support staff. And we've been meeting and also just reaching out and contacting them. I have one student on my caseload that you made me think of when you just said that. And I remember just reaching out to her and just kind of like trying to meet her where she was, talking to her about what the challenges were that she was experiencing, what's going on. And just by doing that and kind of just showing the support, that helped her to feel like she can re-engage back into schoolwork. And I was able to connect her with each of her teachers, and now she's doing pretty well. So I will say that for at least for all of the counselors, I know we talked during counseling supervision, we've had some contact with all of our students, which has been pretty impressive in comparison to things that I've heard from other schools where that's been a challenge. Another thing that we have talked about in SST2 is just who are the kids that we're losing and who's the kids where we need to like just show up and just give a knock on the door and say like, hey, we are still here and we love you and we really want you to engage. And we've had meetings like that, and I know that a couple of staff members here have done that as well. And so that's how we're working to keep all the kids engaged.
Good.
Any other thoughts about that? Dana, you guys?
If I could just, Joe, if I could follow up. I mean, do we notice any difference between, I mean, we're early still in the high school experience, but students that came from, you know, the lower middle schools versus, you know, students that have just come into the high school where we've had a greater opportunity to work with them. Do we find that makes a difference in terms of the outcomes? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes. So just to rephrase to make sure that I have it, are we finding it? Are we noticing a difference connecting with the kids during remote learning if we have a longer history with them, like if they've been with us?
That's probably yes.
I will defer to my staff who's working directly with the families and the students. My initial thought is yes, in some cases, but our team, and when I say team, I mean NHCS really broadly, works so hard to build relationships with kids. And we did have 6-7 months of the school year to do that. And you know, when Ashley's, I think I know who you're talking about, Ashley, when you think about that student, she's actually been a student on and off at our school for many years, as have her siblings, and she struggled even though we had known her. So it really depends on the student, where they were kind of at when this happened, and also what relationships and systems we had in place for them to support beforehand. But I'd love to hear from Tanisha maybe, or maybe the counselors, and Kate, you can Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'm just going to say one framing piece, and then I'd ask anybody to chime in who works with the students, is that while it is sort of tempting and understandable to assume that the students who've been with us for longer are in sort of a more stable or stronger place because of their duration with the school. In fact, some students specifically stay at neighborhood house because of the complexities that they have in their lives and have been with us for a long time, continue to have those complexities, and rather than jumping from school to school, which might be the case under other circumstances, they stay at neighborhood house. And we also have always found that with new students coming in, they are, they represent a real cross-section in terms of, prior skills, lagging skills, both on the academic and the emotional and the behavioral and mental health. So I sort of share the sense with Dana that it is more individualized than, although there may be some trends, and we do talk about it in terms of trends. I don't think it's as tidy as saying students who've been with us longer are doing better and vice versa. But I invite others to add to that or weigh in or contradict if you feel differently.
Many of you on this call have known me for many years. I taught K-1 for 13 years at Neighborhood House. And last night I was home and I got a call from a high school student that I met maybe last year. And she called to check in on me. So it's so interesting that I have students that I've known since they were 4 and now they're in high school and they would never think to call Miss Cooper. So I think it's about the relationship and the connections you have with children, with I say my babies, even though they're in high school. It depends. Like I've met so many new students working in the high school that I've never met or never interacted with. And I feel the same about them as I would with the children that I've known for many years. So it's individual. It's an individual approach. This student called me and I just was so happy because I would never think someone would call me on a Tuesday, what's today, Thursday, Wednesday evening to say hello. And I literally just met her last year. So it depends on our approach in regards to relationships. Once you enter those doors, you're ours, and we treat you as if we've been there for years. I hope that answers your question, Joe.
Yeah, I think that last, what you just said, Tanisha, they're our kids, and I think, I think about them the same way. They're our babies, and we're going to take care of them. But it also takes a village, right? So there's, this call has been focused on the work of our student support team, but our teaching staff and principals and supports and other, building level staff, college and career pathways, operations, have gone above and beyond to connect with kids, to text, call, show up at the door, to, I can't tell you how many teachers are, and as gen ed teachers, special ed teachers are just, kids are having a hard time getting their work done for a variety of reasons, new kids, returning kids. They get on the phone, they get on a Zoom call, and they just stay on the phone with them while the students do their work. This is happening all the way across our school, and I mentioned we just had a leadership team meeting, and when I talked to other charter school special ed directors and student support directors, they're having a real difficulty with attendance and remote learning. And I'm talking 20, 30, 40% of kids are showing up. We are consistently across the board in grade levels, 70%, 80%, 90% of students. It's different in different grade levels, as you can imagine. And we've done a number of things to try and increase attendance, increase engagement. And a lot of that means we're doing way more individualized support than we ever did before. And it's been meaningful and it's been impactful, and our kids are showing up as a result. So.
I have a question. Do you?
No questions from you, sir. No questions from you. Sorry, no. Okay, fine. One question. Go ahead.
I think your response was correct.
Do you have a handle at all? Does anybody on the panel here know what percentage, if there is a percentage of your students that aren't showing up for schoolwork because they don't have access. They don't have a computer.
At this point, I mean, Tanisha, you know, you've delivered some Chromebooks. That was one of the first things that we did, actually, because we didn't want that to be a barrier. And so because we were starting remote learning classes with high school right away, I think the second week out, we made sure to either set up Chromebook distribution at our high school, or to make sure if families couldn't come to pick them up at school, we delivered them to their homes. We did the same thing for middle school and lower school. We also, Kate, you can talk about this too, but we looked at our resources and actually invested in additional technology, and are able to now be getting technology, you know, more than one device, tablet if you're in K1, and a Chromebook if you're in middle school and high school. So we have a lot of families that have multiple children within our school district, and we're able to get, you know, almost a one-to-one, you know, tech access in a way that we didn't need to meet that need when we were, you know, in person in the building. Right now, what we're really just dealing with are very few cases of students who have internet connectivity issues, and we're working with them to solve those problems. And sometimes that means working with them to, you know, pay down a bill so that they can get, you know, reduced price access. We're working with families to get remote hotspots. And sometimes technology doesn't work, so sometimes it breaks and they need a replacement. Those are the things we're dealing with, kind of the IT issues now, but we really prioritize that in the beginning, and I don't think we have any students now that can say that that's a barrier.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we distributed over 250 devices early on in the process, primarily, you know, and that's out of slightly over 700 students, right? So there were devices distributed to any student or family who needed them, and Tanisha has done a wonderful job connecting families to, you know, free wireless and helping, you know, connect or troubleshoot in situations where that hasn't been the case.
Just an aside, related subject, I was interested listening to an interview with James Clyburn, who's increasingly becoming one of the leaders out there. He placed universal broadband right up with the reform of healthcare in terms of what's necessary to change the landscape. I was interested in that.
Yeah, and you know, when we think about opportunities for success, we have to, I think that's a very good point, because we have to think about opportunities for access, right? We want to make sure that our students, that we're removing barriers so that the starting point is more equitable and more, and so that the barriers that our students have to overcome when they show up at school are everywhere. I mean, and internet access is hugely important, as is health and, you know, healthy and safe housing, and access to healthcare, and all the things that we're reading about in the news. And I mean, we can have a whole other lunch and learn about that, I'm sure.
Well, on that note, I'm going to jump in here and just tell everyone that it's 1 o'clock, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time. We're going to cut off the Q&A now, but this conversation has been really, really great, and I just want to thank Dana, Ashley, and Lauren for sharing this presentation, and to Rose and Tanisha for chiming in as well. I've worked at Neighborhood House for about a year now, and I'm still learning so many things about the ways in which we support our students and their families. So I just want to thank you guys for the work that you're doing. It's so important, and thank you for sharing with us. So that's all the time that we have for today. So thank you all for joining us, and thanks again to our presenters. We hope that you found our time together today informative and useful, and we look forward to seeing you hopefully at our next Lunch and Learn coming up on June 19th. It's a Friday, and the topic is going to be college and career pathways. So we hope to see you then, and have a great weekend, everybody. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Good job, everybody.
Thanks, Dana.
Thank you.